Gwen Stefani. You remember Gwen Stefani? She was in this group called No Doubt for a while. She's old. She's like 54 now, 52, but she still looks really good. She was recently doing an interview where she had this very odd insistence that she feels either she is Japanese or she relates to Japanese culture so much that it's almost as if she's Japanese or something.
For this article, it sounds like she's just saying that she likes Japanese stuff, and so that's what.
It's hard to interpret, but the way the interviewer got offended and because it was an Asian woman, right? And what's funny is it was not even a
Oh
Japanese
God.
woman; it's a Filipino woman. I think the woman was Filipino,
uh,
and I'm sorry, you're barely even Asian. You're Pacific Islander. I'm sorry, okay? So, right? Usually when people say Asian, they mean East Asian, not just people from the continent of Asia, because that includes so many different types of ethnicities from Filipino to Indian to Chinese to, well, even Russian, right? Russians are living on the continent of Asia. So just saying Asian it's not precise enough. When you say Japanese, Japanese are East Asian. That's what they're considered. For this woman to get offended is like you're not even you are about as far from Japanese people as Gwen Stefani is, honestly. I don't think that you're even that much closer. But of course, a lot of clever, smart people, they immediately observe that, hey, what's wrong with her being Japanese? Why can't she be transracial? I thought we lived in an enlightened world with progressive values and anybody can be anything they want just because they say so. But suddenly, no, Gwen Stefani doesn't get that benefit because why? Because she's white?
did they actually? Is transracial? Is that a thing actually?
No, it isn't. If you say you're transracial, people will make fun of you and they'll call you a bigot. Usually it's a white person thinking there's something else, right? They'll say it's cultural appropriation or something. It's just wrong. And yet a man saying he's a woman isn't sexist. Make it make sense to me. I don't understand. And then the people who argue against you, all the woke idiots, they will say, it's just not the same. It's offensive for you to even bring it up. That's not an argument. Can you tell me using, logic, pretend you're taking the LSAT, use logic and outline to me, explain like I'm five, why you can be transgender, but you cannot be transracial. And we should call you a bigot instead. Explain it to me. And I've never heard somebody say in logical terms, they've just said, you're a bigot, you're an idiot, this is a bad faith argument. How's it bad faith? I disagree with you, and I'm laying out the logic. Now it's time for you to rebut that. I didn't deceive you. I wasn't lying about my position or what I'm trying to do here. That's what bad faith means, by the way. It means lying. This is a pet peeve of mine. A lot of people like to dismiss other people's arguments by saying they're bad faith. You're a bad faith actor. You understand that means willful deception, right? That's like a person who comes and interviews you for like a fluff Hollywood piece, like, you're promoting a movie, but then the interviewer suddenly ambushes you about stuff you said or, your abusive dad or something. That's bad faith because they came here under the pretense of saying this is a fluff interview and then did something else. Well, I didn't come under any pretense. I think that your position is stupid. I think it's illogical. Here's my argument for that. There's no bad faith whatsoever.
Yeah.
When they say bad faith, they basically mean you're being argumentative. You're damn right I'm being argumentative because I think that your positions are dumb and I'm making that case right now. But that's not bad faith. That's just me disagreeing with you. You can do that in good faith. So, but nobody has ever explained why Gwen Stefani is problematic. Why do we not just accept she's Japanese? And genetically, there's less separating races than there are separating genders. There's far less. Pretty much every specific gene that we quote unquote associate with any particular race. Like black people generally have this gene and Asians generally have this one. Okay, that's true. Ethnicities and races do tend to have a different constellation of genetic markers. However, for every single one of those genes, you can find people that are phenotypically, meaning just based on eye tests, that society views as some other race that has that marker for your race. So, for instance, there's a genetic marker that makes Africans more susceptible to sickle cell anemia, right? That's true. That is kind of a hallmark of being of African descent. However, there are people of all races who have that, right? There are Asian people who have that. Fewer of them. Yeah, there's white people who have that. So that particular genetic marker doesn't make you African, and it doesn't make you not African. It makes you more likely, grouped with others to make you a race that people will, when they look at you, will say, "Oh yeah, you're probably of African descent." That's how race works. There's no clear switch that says, "Oh, you got this one, then you must be in this race." No, it's got to be a group that kind of, this grouping tends to be, okay, you're from this area, right? Well, in gender, you literally have a different chromosome. So there's a way more of a dividing line for gender. And yet it's fluid. You could just say, "Oh, I don't think I'm a man. I think I'm a woman." But there's this sticky part of you having a Y chromosome. There is no such chromosome. There is no such genetic marker that we can point at that says, "Oh, you don't think you're white? But what about this gene that you have? What about this one?" All white people have this gene, and no non-white people have this gene. There is none. There isn't. As far as I know, I'm not a biologist, but as far as I know, there's none. And this is partly because there's mixed races, right? There's mixing, so there's a lot of people most people would agree they look African or they look white, but there's been race mixing, right? There's some mixture. You're a mixture essentially. Well, that person, genetically speaking, is more qualified to claim that they're transracial than a man claiming he's a woman. Genetically speaking, going by the quote unquote science. And apart from that, I'm not even saying that, oh, because the science says so means you can't say this or you can't say this. Okay, you want to live in a world where, okay, it's not about the science. It's just about respecting how people feel. I can even be on board with that. I'm not one of these people that says, man, it's super important that we acknowledge these chromosomes before how people feel. Maybe in a society, it's more important to acknowledge how people feel about themselves than it is to acknowledge chromosomes. Sure. However, explain to me then the hypocrisy.
Yeah.
Because then why do we not respect how people feel when it comes to their race?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, Gwen Stefani liking certain Japanese things seems like it should have just as much weight as a male wanting to, wear a dress or something.
Yes, it should. And I asked this open question. And, we say Gwen Stefani, but we know people like this. Like, think of the white guy who's a weeb and he only wants to date Asian girls and he only watches anime or whatever. We all know that type of person. I'm not sure that they always say they are transracial or whatever, but it's the same sort of deal.
Yeah.
And I asked it like it's an open question, like, why are you guys being hypocrites? Why? This is so illogical. But the reality is it's not head scratching to me. I know exactly what's going on. And what's going on is this is just a campaign against white people. It's just a campaign against white people. If it were only non-white people who got it in their head that they're white, people would be okay with it. They would say, oh, that's fine. That's good. That's even empowering or progressive or whatever. Race doesn't matter, guys. Race is just a construction, and we're breaking down those barriers. That's what the narrative would be. But it's because white people want to get something, we need to clamp down on it because there's just this pendulum swing of, well, white people have been in charge for so long, and fair enough, they did oppress a lot of people. But now we're getting ours. We're going to get back at them, and we're going to. This is just an outgrowth of that. We're getting back at the whites in every single way, in every single corner possible. And I just think that in general, this attitude, either in the individual or in the macro, it's just part of this, it's sometimes it's not even an individual consciously thinking, I'm going to get back at the whites. It's just part of the zeitgeist. It's just part of this mob thinking, this mass hysteria, right? It's massively immature. It's just like, you're just a bitter, immature kid. You're just a loser. You're a loser. I label it loser mentality. Oh man, I just want to make sure white people don't get more movie roles. I just want to make sure they don't think they can like any culture they want. They better not wear my hairstyle. They better not, eat my food or cook it at their restaurant. It's just petty, stupid horse shit that reveals almost like a societal, like a macro insecurity about yourself. And it's pathetic and it's ugly. If we could distill all of these people down to an individual, just like personify them as one person, this person would be the pettiest, whiniest loser you've ever met. That's how I view all the woke people who their goal really is just to marginalize white people because white people marginalized them in the past. You're a loser. You're pathetic. You're sad. At the root of it, that's why I'm so like disgusted by woke people because they are that person. You can't do this. You can't eat my food. You can't wear my hair. That's what you are. That's what this is.
You see the link I just sent you?
Yeah. It's a white guy with an Asian girl, right? Is that's the person who interviewed that Gwen Stefani,
Yeah.
right? So the person who interviewed Gwen Stefani is dating a white guy, right? I'm not upset about it. You can date whoever the hell you want, but it just shows that they want to live in both worlds. They want to play out their resentment, but at the same time, they want to live in this world where they have their inborn, their preferences. A lot of them are cultural. Like people say, well, we white beauty standards are the norm because they dominated the world for so long. Yeah, sure, probably, yes, and I accept them. I have them. I'm not bitter about them though, and I don't complain about them. And I sure as hell don't, on the one hand, on one side of my mouth, complain about it. On the other side, date a white person. I don't do that. So you're the hypocrite. You're the loser. You're the whiner. It's just childish. And I think that's the best way to combat these people. Don't get bogged down in like they wanna create some sort of because they all went to college and they all did 4 years of a useless major in some gender studies or ethnic studies, right? So they have all the literature and they have all the arguments, bad ones, but there's literature, so they can cite stuff. They can talk about the white oppression and all of this stuff, right? And the culture and things like that. They can talk about how problematic everything is. Don't get bogged down in that argument. Just distill their behavior into just a resentful, petty, bitter, childish person who just doesn't like that white people had it good for a long time. And now here's my chance to get back at them. So I'm going to take every petty opportunity to say, no, you can't. You can't wear my hairstyle. You can't eat my food. You can't date my people unless I want to date you. I'm sure. You can't do any of that. You can't say that, you feel Japanese. You can't have these movie roles because now I have a little bit of power and I'm going to exercise it like a petty, petty child. And you can say, oh, well, turnabout's fair play, right? Because the white people did that for so long. Like, yeah, but don't you think you're bigger than that? Don't you think you're better than that? You apparently don't. Like, that's one of the main arguments that people have always said about how bad white people have been to everybody else. The only way that works as an argument that white people have been historically bad to other races is that they were uniquely oppressive. They were uniquely bad. In other words, if other races were in charge and had all the power, they wouldn't have behaved this poorly. That is the fundamental argument, right? Because otherwise, whoever was in charge would have behaved just as poorly, then what difference does it make if it was white people oppressing everybody else? What difference does it make? If you flip the switch, it just would have been Asians oppressing people, would have been Africans, whatever. That's not a good argument. It was just humans being humans. So the thing that the linchpin is that white people are uniquely bad. And that's why they should feel guilty. And that's why I am justified in taking it out on them now in these various ways in the culture. But I don't think that argument holds any water. They were not uniquely bad. When people have power, they abuse it usually. And I think that's what you're seeing with a lot of non-white people now. They got a little power, and what's the first thing they try to do with it? Abuse it, right? And you can say it's not the same. It's not the same. They oppressed us, they enslaved us, and they did this for hundreds and hundreds of years. And now I'm just trying to hold them accountable, and I don't want them to have acting jobs. It's just not the same. It's like, okay, fair enough. That's not the same. Now you explain to me the Mongol Empire. Tell me how that's not the same. Tell me how that's not, non-white people had not just a little power, they had a lot of power. And how did they use it? How did they behave when they had that power? Did they become enlightened, awesome people? Did they found a fucking Wakanda? Is that what they did? Or did they found a bloody Mongol empire that killed and oppressed people? Which one did they do? Well, it seems to me that they behave much like the Romans and much like the British, and whoever has power will wield it and by many definitions abuse it. So you're not any better because you're non-white. You're more aggrieved, but maybe it's controversial to say, but the only reason why you're aggrieved is because your quote unquote race, they lost for many, many centuries. That's it. If they had won for many, many centuries, then they just would have been the oppressors. Okay? So it's just a matter of winning or losing. And you're just salty that you lost, and now you're being an immature child and taking it out on people in a modern context that doesn't require it. This is just like movie roles we're talking about. You're just being a fucking child. So that is what that says to me. And I don't know if this is a long tangent, but people who react viscerally against Gwen Stefani saying something as innocuous as just, I feel like I'm a Japanese person. What happened to live and let live? What happened to let this woman feel how she wants to feel? No, no, you can't. And then they can't explain the difference, but I know what the difference is. She's white.
Yep.